Hello, guys. Welcome to tonight's podcast of the Three Voices. Tonight, our topic is how does enlightened living impact our experience of earning a living? And this has many facets to it, and in preparation, I've kind of reflected back on my life and the way that I've earned a living. And um, I hope I can share some of that with you tonight. Some of it has to do with the notion of being called to do a certain kind of work. So, for example, I remember being in Boston and I heard about a job at McLean Hospital working with emotionally disturbed kids at this fantastic Harvard Research Center. And it really piqued my interest in psychology and working with people and my inclination to really try to listen to people and be compassionate and try to help. And so I was called to that job. So that was a calling. And I don't think that um, I would have had that calling were it not for the fact that I had already begun meditating quite a bit, um, studying the ancient wisdom, studying concepts of service, and I was primed and ready for that. Um, and yet, throughout my life, and there have been really everything that I've gotten into, like when I went to work for Columbia Pictures. Yes, it was working in information technology, which was something that I had studied and was skilled at and exercised my skill and my interest in developing models and in managing change and envisioning the future and helping organizations to change. But it was also something about walking in Central Park before I decided to take the job and envisioning traveling to Europe and working with a movie studio, but it's international subsidiaries. So there was an aspect of calling to it. And then there's an aspect of whatever the job, and we were chatting earlier, and somebody used the example of truck driver. Whatever one does not preclude an individual be living in an enlightened way. You could do any kind of work. But for me, there's something about whatever the work is, if I have a practice of stilling my mind, centering myself, cultivating clarity, being present in the moment, it has a dramatic impact on the process of earning a living. So those are just a couple of the initial dimensions to this. And I want to turn it over to you
It's a
guys,
pretty cool start.
and then we'll chat about it.
Yeah. What do you think, Thomas?
My first thought has to do with just what enlightenment is in itself, and then how to apply it. Because the first thought I have is, as we've talked before, is where does life take place? The only time we're alive and the only time we can earn anything is, in a sense, in the present. That is, we start with being more awake. And then once we're more awake, one can make other decisions about that. But until we're more awake, basically we're just functional. We're operating on stimulus response, and decisions are in a way not ours to make because we're just responsive. It's pre-programming. It's not conscious choice. So if we're talking about wanting to convert enlightenment into conscious choice, and that conscious choice including income, increasing income, that's not quite the purview initially of enlightenment, because enlightenment is a standalone event inside us, because it's our best hope, in my view, of gaining some kind of not only life after death, although we're not sure of that, but it generates more of a capacity to live the life we're living more fully. And that can take many directions. I was thinking earlier, and it's part of this, is that if we think about what the greatest source of conflict is in the world, it's ego. And one of the main things, one of the primary contributions of a higher state or an enlightened state is that we can see that ego is not a living thing. It's not a present tense event inside us. And so if we can move away from ego into a higher state, then a lot of the conflicts which are ego focused based on insult, ego's response to insult or slight or disrespect or anything else, that brings ego down. And once ego is not so prominent in our perception of value, then we can probably apply some of that experience, some of that, what we have learned from that, to earning an income, increasing our potential. It gives us new ideas and look at things a little differently. That's very rough. I'm apologizing for that. It just
So
Well,
let me,
don't apologize.
that's a good context. Let me ask you a question then.
Perfect.
So we know, as we've discussed many times, that this quest to I don't know, transcend the ego, let go of the ego, be in the present, live in the only place we really can be, which is in the present. How does that translate in terms of the way you earn a living as an artist? And I mean, I could see it makes I could see how it might impact it dramatically. But what's been your experience?
Well, one of the main things is I do not assume an identity attachment to the work I do. It's just a job, like any job. Because one of the things that happens to us when we pursue income is we also pursue identity attachment to how that's done. And we don't need the identity attachment to produce the income. The identity attachment makes us vulnerable to a certain kind of internal failure if it doesn't work out, because you'll start reprimanding yourself for being incomplete, inadequate, or whatever. And enlightenment is just the awareness of. It's not every time we try and add something to it, we leave the present to do that. And so mostly what I think I gain from being more conscious or more enlightened, even now, I mean, it's always when we're talking about this, it's a little easier to be more in the present because this is our topic. I just try and be here for whatever it is I'm doing, wherever I am, and whatever it is I'm doing anytime. Because,
How does that help you make money?
well,
I
that's what
mean, isn't that the bottom line we're talking about today?
I don't I mean, the income part is actually coming, not, it's not coming from enlightenment itself, because there's no, it's a being state. It's not a knowledge state. So you don't really, it doesn't really transform or transfer quite in the way we have phrased it, not in my experience. Basically, enlightenment wakes us up to being alive in the present, to being alive in the life we're living, more alive. How we process that from that point is no longer a question about enlightenment, it's a question about processing data, because enlightenment will provide a certain amount of information, which once we start processing that information, it's also very hard to remain in the present. So it's a separation. Enlightenment, in a sense, is a separation from the senses and the body overall of our concept of self and our focus of attention. So that is something far above anything we're doing. And so when we try and reformulate that or encapsulate that in the question like we've asked tonight, like how does it impact our monetary significance? There's not a, in my view, at least in my experience, there's not really a route for that. There's not, because it's not part of that. It's not really part of this world as we generally understand it to be.
Huh.
So then,
That really contradicts a lot of what's spoken about in today's world and for several years, which is like a consciousness of abundance, and that there's something about consciousness setting the context for, it can be for making money. You know, the ability to move through obstacles, the ability to have clarity because one isn't so attached to ego, the ability to open the heart and be generous to others, which sets the stage for relationships and partnerships, and showing your work, whether your work is a salesperson or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever it is. And I think there's a seems to be quite a connection between the context derived from consciousness and the process of making money and the ability to make money. Rick, what do you think about that?
Well, I would say you're just about dead on. Um, because, there's two parts to the question. Okay. And we're emphasizing earning a living. When I looked up the definition of that a couple of times, a couple ways, it's basically to earn financial compensation to be able to live in the world the way you want to. Okay. Now, that's a very important point there because I would say that the Dalai Lama or maybe a monk in the Himalayas might be considered very uh, enlightened people, yet they need almost no money and they earn their living. They live. So I think the part of enlightened living, since the way I view enlightened living is an active role, okay, an active being. And as an active being, Rob, you kind of hit it on the head. I would use the word, you've heard it before, detachment. Okay. Where Rob is talking about consciousness and perceiving options, I also want to stress the very important point of acknowledging the connectivity of all things and people, because when one works in a positive aura or energy, one literally invokes the laws of attraction, and that literally they make what appears to be coincidences happen. We all have heard, even the heathen, whoever he or she may be, knows the sentence, whether they believe it or not, there's no such thing as coincidences. Okay? There is a reason for being or for happening. That's a question we should answer. But you see, I agree very much with what you've said here, Rob. Enlightened living allows us. Here's my simple statement, and it'd be fun to hear what the two of you say if I'm asking the right question, if I'm making the right statement. Enlightened living allows me to choose without regret anything I want to do. And it allows me to detach myself from the chains of, well, Rick, if you're not flying in your private plane, you blew it. Well, Rick, you're not driving a Mercedes, you blew it. Well, Rick, your bicycle just got a flat tire. Okay. Well, I blew the flat tire. Okay. Any one of those vehicles can make an enlightened person happy. There's nothing wrong with wanting the jet. There's nothing wrong with being happy in a, if you will, mountainside cabin out in the woods, or even just in a lovely rural environment. So every one of the different choices one makes how to live. And this is the beauty of enlightened living. You're not stuck where you grew up or what you were taught. Or I can't leave because I have a job. Okay, I may not get a job. Or I can't leave because I have two kids. Well, you know what? You make that choice. You make that choice as an enlightened individual. My obligation is towards my family, and if they don't, if they won't move with me, then I must stay here because I brought them into the world. An enlightened person may be able to say, and it happens a billion times, we're leaving New York. Let's go to Atlanta. Let's go to Jacksonville. Okay. Let's go anywhere, west, St. Louis. Okay. Enlightened living allows us to look at the world around us and make the optimal choice for ourselves. And it is making money, but it's not how much that counts. Okay. You need to know what makes you happy. So, my summary statement is enlightened living allows the person to detach from the uh, chains and obligations of the world and assess the opportunities and options at every point in their life. The old cottage, you know, today is the first day of the rest of your life has plenty meaning because with enlightened living, you could change your life in a minute, let alone a day.
Yeah, my
Well
position,
put.
and I'll try and make it a little clearer since it didn't seem as clear even to me. But enlightenment, as I understand it and have experienced it so far, is a state of being. It's not a state, it's not doing something, it's a state of being. And so if I'm sitting working on a piece of art, it it is it is incumbent on me as much as I can be to be conscious of doing so. Now that is not the consciousness or the awareness of what I am doing is separate from what I am doing. And so if I try and cultivate enlightenment as a means of increasing my income, then it's no longer enlightenment in and of itself, just to be more conscious of being in the present. Because as soon as we attach or anyone attaches an identity of any kind, a definition of any kind to the concept of being in the present, that is a past tense event and it takes us out of the present. So, from the point of view of being more conscious, like you're saying, Rick, you could see more options in what you're doing. But in acting upon those options is not an enlightened, it's not an enlightened activity. It's an activity. It's not being, it's doing.
Well, what I just see right now, and Rob, you may want to join in on this one. The big difference I have with you here, Thomas, is significant because I understand, I wrote it down. Your theory, not theory, your perception or thought of enlightenment is a state of being, and it's actually totally detached. It appears so that when you attach yourself to a painting or to accounting, to a financial statement, to an IT, you have left that. You've left that state of being. I think it's 100% the opposite. I think that when you achieve a state of enlightenment, and I'm not talking some deep master statement, I'm still a knucklehead that makes lots of mistakes, but I could tell you 100% that I make the choices I want to make, and I lose some and I win some. Mostly I win. And a lot of times when it looks like I was going to lose something, wow, boom, I bump into someone just like you said, Rob. You saw an ad or something sparked you. That wasn't a coincidence. You were thinking, what am I going to do? In fact, you may have been asking the universe, what should I do? And not as the universe, like I can't think about it myself. You were sharing it with the universe. You were throwing it out there. You were thinking it yourself. So Thomas, I don't want to stay a long time with it. I want to banter it back and forth. To me, a state of being is nowhere. Okay. It's you're not achieving your interaction with the world. When you achieve, the Tibetan masters, Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, all of these, couple and 10 more, dozen more, after them. Okay. They didn't just have a state of being. They went out to change the world. They interact in it and they tried to share that enlightenment, that state of being. See, I think achieving that state of being is a definite objective, but once achieved, you need to utilize it and make it the thing you see to paint the picture. I consider myself an artist, very much. I can't paint for poop. And I draw even worse. Even stick figures look ugly, but I can create business structures and deals. And we'll talk more about, my little path later because I don't want to. I want to get your thought into this, Rob. But you know, once the more I feel I've learned of life, the more that I feel, if I might say, enlightened, or the more I pursue enlightened living and thought. You know, I'll quote the old golfer, God, I forget his name, but he says, "It's amazing. The more I practice, the luckier I get." Okay, and
Yeah.
and and I say, the more enlightened I am, the luckier I get.
There's a um, you've all heard of it. There's a state of being called flow,
I
and one can be in a state of flow and be painting, making a painting. One can be in a state of flow and developing a detailed plan to implement a business idea or to assess a business idea. One can be in a state of flow in looking at the and understanding the needs of an individual or an organization and work with them to envision how they could better transform to achieve their goals. This 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 beingness, this soul infused personality can be doing things as an expression of that. And it doesn't have to be a high-minded thing.
hmm
It could be like the guy in the kitchen washing dishes, the Zen master washing dishes. He's washing the
exactly.
dishes, but he brings great presence and love to that, and that has a resonance for the world. So I don't. It's almost like when I listen to you talk, and you may not mean this, Thomas, but I think there's something beyond the duality of you're either being or doing. And when you're being, you could be enlightened, but when you're doing, if you're not attached to that, then as long as you're not attached to it, you can stay enlightened. But I think there's something inherent in the soul, in the essence of who we are, that where there's a resonance to do certain things and not do others, and it in part defines what our paths end up being.
But I think, Thomas, I mean, don't you think that when
I think
you go
I
ahead?
think I think both of you are just you're looking at the functional side of this. My perception right now, for example, everybody that's listening and ourselves sitting here, try and be in this present moment. Try and focus your attention right now as much as you can on being in the room you're in, being what you are in the room you're in as much as you can just see it, perceive it, be aware of it. Just try to be aware of sitting in your chair right now and ask yourself in this moment, sitting in your chair, what can you do? You can't do anything. That is the enlightenment, the awareness
What do you mean
of
you can't do anything? I don't understand.
the next moment you can, but in the moment we're in right now, we can change nothing. At the same time, we can be conscious or more aware of that, but we can't do anything because the moment's going by too quickly.
But
Conscious,
I think. But
Well,
Awareness
that doesn't make sense though, because we are doing something. I mean, that's why I can't grasp
is
this.
doing. That's what the functions are doing. That's why the distinction is important, because the state of enlightenment is it's free of the senses. The thing is that as soon as we try and ground it in the senses, give it a utility, it stops being on the level it's on, and it's transformed into a practice of some kind, a doing of some kind, which that's
How
fine, but
about living in our world? But we're talking about earning a living.
that moves
So
into
how
function.
can you earn a living in that state of being?
That's what I'm saying, is that it's not for that. It's for enlightenment. It's for being conscious, not doing something.
Okay, well,
I
that's
don't,
a fair point. Rob, you have to understand, Thomas, if I'm understanding it, and this is why I disagree with you, okay, but I understand what you're saying. You're saying you can't mix earning a living and
That's
enlightenment.
what I'm saying, is that they are not the same thing. You can try and mix them, and you can use what you gain from enlightenment feeding into your functions to accomplish something or other. But enlightenment itself is not there at that time.
Well, that's what I mean with limited. You can either be one or the other. They're mutually exclusive.
I
It's
don't agree with that at all.
No, I don't at all.
I think, I mean, take the true master. I mean, the three of us may be close, or we may exhibit attributes of enlightenment, which is why we call it enlightened living versus saying we are enlightened. But the true master, who is truly enlightened, do they all of a sudden, does Jesus Christ, does a Buddha, does a um, an Eckhart
Muhammad, how so?
Tolle, or someone who stands up and speaks from the heart or makes a poem, or do they all of a sudden pop out of enlightenment when they're doing that? I don't think so.
Mostly they do, because it's very difficult. You have to be, I mean, maybe Buddha and Christ, guys on that level, but for most of us, most people, with even with the slightest ambition to become more enlightened, are going to struggle with maintaining an enlightened state while we're doing anything. And we can observe ourselves right now, try and do that, try and
My
be.
summary would be then they're not enlightened. That's not enlightened. Your separation. That's numbing. That's numbing yourself to life.
I have mentioned many times in our conversations over the last couple of years that enlightenment is not human. And everybody thinks, oh, we have a soul, we're human, we have all these things. I have great doubt over the perception of what we think reality is in our
You
place.
have said that many times, yes.
So when it comes to enlightenment and we're talking about achieving this higher state of awareness, what do you think that takes to maintain that?
Okay.
It
Well,
takes holding.
I'd rather, I want to answer that, but I'd
Let
rather,
me just finish. It takes maintaining a fairly constant vigilance over ego, trying to attach an identity to everything we feel, think, do, and so on. Enlightenment stays above that. But when we start talking about the need to do these things to live in the world, yeah, we try not to attach identity to them, which, if we can manage that, helps sustain a higher level of enlightenment longer. But the thing is that enlightenment takes a huge amount of energy, and it's a confrontation with ego at every step. That makes it
so,
very difficult to do both.
so
I,
I would
I
like to
think
make,
you're
wait, I want to make a summary statement. We're near the end and then jump right in, Rob. You see, again, to those listening and to my great smile, you know, we are definitely not yes men. Okay. We do not just say, oh yeah, I got it. Because, but that's why we're three voices. And like the mountaintop, Thomas, you were skiing down a double diamond that my big old butt is never going to go. Okay. Because I can't run that path. Okay. But doesn't mean that your path is wrong. And Rob, I think you have a slightly different one too, and you could get into it, though yours and mine are acknowledging a little more that enlightened living allows us to still maintain our lives in the real world. You know, There's an old saying I read almost every day that a man can be a citizen of two worlds. He could be a citizen of the kingdom of God and that of humanity, so that we could live in two worlds, okay, not just one. But Thomas, that doesn't mean that your type of enlightened living is any more wrong for you or anyone else that likes it. Okay. To me, I could never see that. And I would tell you that, Thomas, I consider myself at least a semi enlightened man. I know the joy I feel when I see everything. When I look at my window, when I wake up in the morning, when I get pissed that something went wrong, and then say, well, what am I going to do? Got to solve it. Somebody asked me when my car got hit, what do you think? And I go, what am I going to think? It got hit. It already got hit. Now all I got to do is fix it. Okay. I'm not going to sit and mope over it. And, we talk about ego attachment. You're right. But once you achieve that detachment, you have now created an ability to function at a optimum level. And what does an optimum level mean? Whatever the hell you want. And see, you like to function in, quote, the present. I like to function more in the idea that I am, I see things that you don't see. And you not meaning one of you two, but another. I see things I see. Thomas, you see things you see. That's the beauty of living. They're all
I
good.
um, it's interesting because as I listen to you, Thomas, where you describe the challenges, the difficulty, how hard it is to live in enlightenment. On one hand, I agree with that. I mean, there would be more people doing it if it was that easy. However,
Right.
on the other hand, my experiences and the teachers that I've worked with and my own experience as a result of their guidance is that the one that I can enter a state of presence, there it is actually quite easy. There's an ease associated with it. It's not a struggle. That's why I brought up the word flow. There's a flow to it. It's like, did you ever work on something? And I'm sure you have, painting, Rick, and doing business where 2 hours go by and you say, where'd that time go? Where was I? The ego was quite quiet. The being was engaged, and the soul was engaged. And I think that it's not necessarily hard to do. It's some of it, it's a matter of allowing it to occur, allowing the who you are to flow. And then it becomes easier when you're butting your heads against doing something you're not supposed to be doing. There may be a friction which gives one pause and allows one to examine one's doing and then shift. But allowing oneself to do what you're called to do, there's an ease to that. There's a flow to
I
that.
like that call to do what you called to do. Yes. Cool.
For me,
That's
this is,
impressive.
Rob, you just described functional reality. Because basically we live in a functional and conscious reality simultaneously. But most of our attention, most of the time, is on the functional side, aided by our perception of self and ego inside the mind. It's not conscious. It's
I
function.
don't agree with that. When one is performing a function,
Right.
there could
Right.
be there could be pinpointed consciousness,
Yeah.
pinpointed awareness on the task at hand, and was still simultaneously being able to pay attention to the breath.
Yeah, I
Being
can
able,
that, Rob, except how long does it last, actually? If you're actually paying
yes.
close attention, it is however much people want to say this is easy, I disagree. Because controlling your internal attention, your focus of attention, because attention is constantly being uh, it's constantly being guided or altered by our perception in our
And
mind.
Thomas, maybe that's yours, that is. Maybe once we control our egos, once maybe we unleash some of the
So I
chains,
just whatever
you
whatever
can't have the only way to go.
I'm
You
not
have to
saying
know
that.
there are
I'm
other ways.
saying my observations. You guys are, and so many people that pursue enlightenment think that it has a goal in material form. It has uses, but that is not the goal. To be in the present, to just be conscious is the goal of enlightenment. It is the existence of enlightenment. Doing
But
is
see,
something
that's
else.
your definition of enlightenment. I
There
say
is.
enlightened living is to be able to live freely with love, compassion, harmlessness, and joy. You end the suffering of living. Okay. But you live. Why, you're saying to be enlightened, what should we be? Stay in a mountaintop?
Here's a quote from this book that Rick, that you actually gave me. It's called The Soul, the Quality of Life. It says, from the angle of the esoteric science, the sense of responsibility, and one doesn't really do work without some sense of responsibility. I added that in, is the first and the outstanding characteristic of the soul.
Right.
In so far, therefore, as a disciple is in contact with the soul and is becoming a soul-infused personality
Right.
and is consequently under soul direction, so far will he undertake the task presented to them.
Yeah, I don't agree with that at all.
Okay. And by all means, you should not. Okay, that's
I,
what I'm trying to say.
I
The
just,
difference, but the
yeah.
difference between, at least I'll say with me, and I think Rob, is Thomas. There are different paths down the mountain. You can't say everyone, you have the only way. You don't.
Saying that.
No
I'm
one
saying
does.
I know you can interpret it that way if you want. I'm only telling you what I've observed and what I've experienced. However you want to interpret it, you're welcome to. I'm
No,
saying
but
in
that's your enlightened life, and that's a beautiful thing.
yeah, I'm
I'll
just
say one thing though, Thomas. I do find that one of the reasons why I value meditation is that it does ground my awareness. It allows me to find stillness, or relative stillness. And when one is sitting there with no disturbances around that me, right? And I'm just doing that, and it's quiet, and I'm in a posture of attention, then I do find that my ability to be present and to be fully aware and to let go of the thoughts that distract my mind is it's easier to do that in that situation. So for me in my practice, I'm trying to find a balance of the two, but I believe that awareness can be present in the doing and in the pursuit of a purpose. And in fact, that purpose seems to come in part from clarity, and clarity in part comes from focused mind, still mind, which can be cultivated in meditation. So there's like a synergy between the being and the doing, I find, that informs my version of enlightened living.
okay. The question I would put here is what is the key ingredient in meditation is attention control. It doesn't matter whether you're sitting still or moving. So the point is that my ambition has been since I first learned about enlightenment decades ago, was how is it possible to graduate the concept of enlightenment from the esoteric to the general? That is, everybody, anybody at any time that we can think of, unless there's some damage to the body, the brain, or something, at this moment, anyone in the world, no matter what they're doing, has the potential to be more enlightened or more awake to, more conscious of what it is they're doing. wherever they are, whatever they're doing. That takes a certain kind of focus of attention, which it's not, it cannot be manufactured by function. It's something that you have to willfully introduce into yourself based on the knowledge that you're, or the awareness that you are not as awake as you can be. If you sit and meditate, I mean, I've done meditation, I've watched people meditate and so on. My question has always been, okay, are you going to be able to carry that when you get up? What happens when you're out driving?
Yes, we're training our minds.
Yeah. I mean,
That's what I'm saying. Enlightenment revolves around attention control. Meditation revolves around attention control. You don't have to be sitting still to do that. Anybody, anybody in the world right now with enough interest in enlightenment can be more awake in this moment we're in right now. And
I
I
agree. I'm
wake
not
up.
disputing that.
I'm only saying wake up more because there's no top. You can't say, oh, I'm enlightened. Because I remember years ago when I was teaching, people say, I want to be enlightened. I said, well, that's not the aim. The aim is to become more enlightened. That is to wake up more than we were yesterday, more than we were a minute ago. There's no top to it. You just have to keep
Okay.
coming back.
I
And
that I agree with.
so
And
if functional activity takes us away, which it does frequently, we have to figure out how to combine that higher state with that function, which is really hard to do.
I
And
agree with that. I agree with that.
when you're in this or that,
Mhm.
sometimes I've had long periods. Like I told you one time, I had 11 hours once in a conscious state. I thought I was there. I thought I made it, and then it just dropped out.
Yeah.
And other periods not as long, but they just drop out.
Yeah.
And so we have to keep coming back. I mean, enlightenment or enlightened living is a constant refreshment of the concept moment to moment. It's not something you earn and that's it. Enlightenment is a constant thing. Working on becoming enlightened is a constant thing. And
Correct.
there's no boundaries for it in that sense. It doesn't attach to anything. And as soon as we try and attach it, make it utility, make it into a utility, it transforms into a function and it's no longer an enlightened
We're
state.
not we're not talking of attachment. We're talking of
There is
detachment.
we were talking about but let's apply. So I felt like I was um in sync with you quite a bit just now in the last minute or so, Thomas. Um, but let's try to so that premise that it never ends, it isn't dependent upon one sitting on a cushion or doing this or doing that. It's a matter of waking up, right? But there seems to be, and it does take work, but
Yes.
but but like work, most types of work, and I think it's true of waking up, there is um, a change that occurs in engaging in that priority of waking up.
Yeah,
The man who does that and places that in the as one of their priorities and chooses to make that a priority and does that attention control, it has an impact. It has an impact on the brain, and it also has an impact in the process of, if you one needs to make money, of making money and responding to the survival, the social contribution, or whatever the needs there are, whatever the human needs that cause one to make money. The man who is prioritizing waking up, um, uh, it impacts their ability and their experience of earning a living. And
I
that's what
agree.
we set out to talk about.
I agree. The point I'm making is that you want to wake up first. If you put
Not linear. That's not linear because like you said, it's continuous.
but if anybody puts, I want to achieve this before waking up, then waking up is contingent upon something other than waking up. What we want to do is just have nothing else there other than I need to be more conscious in this moment we're in right now.
But
After that, if you can succeed at that, if you can actually become more conscious right now in this moment, after that, there is memory created from the experience automatically by the brain, which has some utility. But if you focus then on that utility, the likelihood of dropping out of the present is pretty high.
But so then what are you supposed to do? Work on it for 80 years and then you go earn a living?
No, you try and keep coming back. You realize you've lost it and come back. It's a series
Exactly.
of beginnings. It's not an end. It's a series of beginnings. We
Yeah.
just think when we get to a process where we're functioning and accomplishing something that we've gotten somewhere, and we don't go back as quickly. We think we've made it, but we haven't. The present is still going by at the same speed, whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I agree with that. Listen, I'm cognizant of the time. Um, I think we have enough time for some closing remarks, but it's been an hour, and so this is a topic maybe we come back to because it's very juicy. And
Yeah, it is. There's a lot to be said here
Yeah.
because Uh, but the underlying issue really here isn't earning a living. It could be painting. It could be doing your AI or IT program. It could be doing the books of a company. Okay. It could be anything that's outside of the individual or that consciousness of that person. And so the real ending comment on my side is Thomas, you decide what's right for you and whoever else wants that path. I decide what's right for me, okay, and whoever likes to follow, some of that path. And my thought of enlightened living does not, okay, it is freeing the box. It is hard work. It does take meditation. It does take study. It does take practice. Okay. The great baseball, basketball, football stars, the sports stars, okay, not one of them just were blessed by God and they all work out, they all practice, they all, use their body. Okay. We're talking about using our mind and heart. And by the way, many athletes do that too. But the
yeah,
idea here is that my perception of becoming more enlightened allows me to do many more things in the world, helping, being part of, sharing, growing. It allows me to recognize the unity and nature of all things. So I'll leave with that thought today and respect everyone's thought. If there's a fourth, fifth, or 85th voice that, believes jumping out of airplanes, flying, before the parachute opens is the way they are enlightened, God bless them. That works for them. Okay. And
but
who
but
knows?
but I just want to leave this call with kind of what I want to explore. I want to go beyond that statement you closed with, which is if one wants to, you know, jump out of an airplane and if that works for them, God bless them. That is true.
With a
Um, uh,
parachute.
right, but or not. But what I want to explore is ask the question, well, tell me about that. How does that, when you say it works for me, what is that like? What does it mean? Is it the same all the time? Is there moments of greater clarity? Is there moments of greater effectiveness? Is there moments of greater or lesser function? What I like to explore the nuance because it's easy to just say whatever you say is okay because you do you and I'll do me and if we can understand each other, great. I want to explore that because I do want to understand the
That's fair.
differences and what
Very
drives them.
fair.
That's what I want to leave with.
Very fair. Very good.
Last thought here would be there's no leader and no follower in present tense.
Agreed. Agreed. And to all, a good night.
Be
Thomas,
here
if
now
I'm
or
not here, where am I going?
be now or be nowhere.
No. I'll see you guys.